A janitor's son, correcting my French. That's rich. The words, laced with scorn and amusement, rippled through the penthouse conference room like a stone cast into still water. Heads turned. Laughter flickered across the faces of executives in 1,000 suits. But the boy at the center of it all, skinny 14 public school backpack slung awkwardly over one shoulder, didn't flinch. Liam Ellis stood still, eyes calm but alert, like someone who'd learned early that staying quiet was sometimes the loudest thing you could do. He hadn't meant to speak. Not really. He'd been sitting quietly by the maintenance cart near the frosted glass wall, legs tucked close earbuds in, but not playing anything. Jack, his father, was on his knees nearby, scrubbing a scuff mark from the marble floor, his janitor's uniform damp with sweat from the summer heat outside. Liam was supposed to be invisible. That was the agreement. But then he saw it on the massive screen at the head of the room, a French contract projected for approval. And it was wrong. Blatantly, embarrassingly wrong. So he said it. One sentence, one correction, one truth. And now, Everett Chow, CEO of Alton Global Holdings oil magnate, self-made billionaire with a Rolex the size of a deck of cards, was standing behind his obsidian desk, hands clasped, smirking at a janitor's kid who dared to speak up. Jack's hand froze mid-wipe. He turned toward Liam, his voice caught somewhere between panic and prayer. "Liam, Liam started." Everett raised a hand. No. Let's indulge the linguist here. Tell me, kid, how many languages do you think you speak? 3, 4, Liam hesitated, then clearly 9. The room exploded in laughter. One executive muttered. "He can count that high." Jack's face flushed. He stood, stepping protectively beside his son, Mr. Chow. "I'm sorry." He didn't mean Everett waved him off, amusement gleaming in his eyes. "Don't apologize, Jack. This is the most entertainment I've had since that CFO tried to expense a yacht in Dubai." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. 9 languages. That's ambitious. "What are they?" Jack whispered. Liam. Maybe just Liam didn't back down. English, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, Italian, Portuguese. The silence was instant. Even the VP of Legal stopped typing. Across the table, Aurora Kensington, the firm's icy, impeccably dressed chief strategy officer, studied Liam like someone suddenly unsure if the rules of the game had changed. Everett, however, chuckled and stepped closer. Impressive. Very impressive. "But see, I grew up in Beirut. Arabic is in my bones. You sure you want to try that one in front of me?" Liam's gaze didn't shift. Anara. Music. Aurora blinked. Everett blinked twice. Jack looked down, unsure what had just been said, but feeling its weight. Everett's lips parted slightly. "What did you just say?" Liam replied, still calm, still rooted. Sometimes those who know the least speak the most. The conference room was now so quiet that the whir of the air conditioning seemed loud. Aurora leaned forward. "How old are you?" 14. "And where did you learn Arabic?" "The library." Everett's jaw flexed. "Jack," he said tightly, "why is your son in this building?" Jack swallowed. His school had a plumbing issue. I had no one to watch him. He promised to stay out of the way. "I was," Liam said, "until I saw a translation. Error in the energy arbitration clause." Everett turned sharply. "You understood that clause?" Liam shrugged slightly. "It used compensation instead of liquidated damages. They're not interchangeable in a French legal context. It could be misinterpreted." Aurora's head snapped toward the screen. He's right. What Aurora stood, walked to the projection, scanned the clause. "Compensation, financier, is ambiguous in French arbitration," she said. "It could weaken our indemnity claim." No one laughed this time. Everett exhaled slowly and sat. His fingers tapped the edge of his desk. "What's your name, kid?" "Liam Ellis." "You a genius, Liam?" Liam looked at his father before answering. "No, sir. Just curious. That's worse, Everett muttered. Geniuses burn out. Curious people are dangerous. A soft laugh broke the tension. Aurora's. Everett glanced at her. You find this funny? No, Aurora said, walking back to her seat. I find it fascinating. She looked at Jack. Your son corrected a $50 million mistake in under 3 seconds. Jack shifted uncomfortably. He reads a lot. Has a memory for patterns. I try to give him time. Everett gestured toward Liam. Well, your time just saved this boardroom a global lawsuit. He paused, then looked around. Get legal to double-check the clause and someone verify everything else. If a janitor's kid can spot this, I want eyes on every line. Liam opened his mouth, then stopped. Whatever it asked. There's also a problem in the Portuguese section. The word intervento should be media. It changes the nature of the arbitration process. Everett stared at him. Aurora raised an eyebrow. Jack turned to his son, voice barely a whisper. How? Liam looked up at his dad. You said if you mop something long enough, you learn to see what doesn't belong. Everett leaned back in his chair, studying the boy like a chess grandmaster facing a prodigy. Jack, he said slowly, we need to talk about your employment contract. Jack frowned. I'm sorry, Everett grinned. I don't pay janitors enough to raise international consultants in their free time. Aurora said nothing, but when Jack looked her way, he could swear there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there earlier. Not pity, not skepticism, curiosity, admiration, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of something more. 9 languages. Everett leaned forward, his voice laced with disbelief. You expect me to swallow that Liam Ellis stood where he had the chapter before, shoulders square, jaw set, eyes steady, not because he didn't feel the weight of the room pressing in on him, but because he did, and he chose not to buckle. I don't expect anything, he replied, calm as ever. I just answer honestly when I'm asked. Everett chuckled darkly, shaking his head as he leaned back in his leather chair. Kid, I've met diplomats who couldn't list 9 languages without stuttering. What are you, some kind of walking United Nations? Jack Ellis cleared his throat. Mr. Cow, maybe we could just... No, Everett said, raising a hand. No one leaves yet. I want to see where this goes. Aurora Kensington hadn't said a word since the end of the last meeting, but she hadn't looked away from Liam either. She tilted her head, studying him with the kind of focus reserved for rare artifacts or undiscovered talent. What languages? She asked softly. Liam's eyes met hers. English, Spanish, French, German, Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, Italian, Portuguese. Prove it, Everett said immediately. You want to stand on that claim? Let's see it. Jack looked at his son, quietly panicked. Liam, you don't have to. I know, Liam interrupted gently. Then he set his backpack down, zipped it open, and pulled out a clear folder creased Wellis used, but meticulously organized. The room watched him silent now. Liam placed 3 documents on the table in front of Everett. The first, he said, is my certificate from Columbia University's Youth Linguistics program. 2 summers finished top of class. The second is from the City of New York's Public Library Advanced Immersion Track, Mandarin and Arabic, both completed with distinction. The third is an online credential from a verified translation platform. They test you live. Everett took the papers with exaggerated skepticism, flipping through them slowly. Aurora leaned over to glance at them, her brow furrowing, not with doubt, but interest. These could be fake, Everett said. They're not, Liam replied. That's exactly what someone with fakes would say. At that, Liam pulled out a tablet. He tapped the screen, then looked up. Would you like a live demonstration? Aurora blinked. Of what exactly? A conversation, Liam said. With someone you know in a language you don't? He tapped again. The tablet, connected to a video call. Within seconds, a middle-aged Asian woman appeared on screen, seated at a university office desk with rows of books behind her and a lanyard around her neck. Professor Chin Liam greeted her in fluid Mandarin with tones as crisp as falling leaves. The professor's face lit up. Liam Everett blinked. Aurora's brows rose. Liam replied with ease, his voice confident. They exchanged pleasantries, then dived into a discussion about structural translation in legal Mandarin, a subject so niche that even the executives couldn't fake understanding. After a minute, Liam turned the tablet to Everett. The professor switched to English. Mr. Chow, Liam Ellis, is the most linguistically gifted student I've had in 15 years. Fluent in Mandarin, truly fluent, not textbook. Natural. He processes language like someone born in the dialect. Everett cleared his throat. How old is he? 14, the professor said, then smiled. A once in a generation mind. The call ended. The room stayed quiet. For once, Everett didn't have a comeback. Liam placed the tablet down. Aurora leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. So tell me, Liam, why? Liam tilted his head. You could be playing video games, she continued, wasting time living like most kids your age. Why do this? Liam looked at his father. Jack stood, frozen mop, still damp in his gloved hand expression, unreadable. Then Liam turned back to Aurora. Because when you speak to someone in their language, they stop seeing you as a stranger, he said quietly. They start seeing you as a person. The words hung there, not profound for their poetry, but for their truth. Everett rubbed his jaw. Where did you even find time to study all this after school? Weekends? My dad works night shifts. I read in the closet with a flashlight when I was little. When I was 10, he started taking me to the library every Saturday. Jack shifted uncomfortable. He needed a quiet place. I figured if we didn't have money for tutors, we'd have time for books. Everett scoffed. You expect me to believe that a janitor raised a multilingual prodigy just by taking him to the public library? Liam looked straight at him. No, he didn't raise me to be a prodigy. He raised me to believe I could be. Aurora exhaled softly. The silence was broken by the ding of the elevator outside the boardroom. A secretary poked her head in clearly, startled by the tension. Mr. Chow, your call with Riyadh is in 15 minutes. Everett waved her away without looking. Then he spoke slowly. Jack, you've worked here how long? 7 years, and I've never heard you say a word. Jack gave a faint smile. Didn't seem like the kind of place where janitors were supposed to speak. Well, Everett said, standing. Apparently they should have. He turned to Liam. So, what's your angle, kid? You looking for a scholarship? Some sob story, a book deal? Liam's voice remained steady. No angle. I just didn't want your company signing a contract with a translation error that could trigger an international lawsuit. Everett narrowed his eyes. And you just did that out of the kindness of your heart. Liam shrugged. I read a quote once. Do what is right, not what is easy. From who? Someone who probably wasn't invited to boardrooms either. Aurora chuckled softly. Everett exhaled again. Well, you just saved this company a potential disaster. He looked at Jack. Jack Ellis, as of this moment, you're no longer janitorial staff. You're being promoted to senior facility supervisor. New salary, full benefits starting today. Jack blinked. Sir, I don't know what to say. Everett waved it off. Don't thank me. Thank your son. He turned to Liam. As for you, I don't trust you yet, but I do know talent when I see it. Report to Miss Kensington tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. You're being brought on as a junior linguistic consultant part-time after school. Let's see what you're really made of. Aurora raised an eyebrow, but didn't object. Not this time. Liam stood silently, backpack still hanging from one shoulder. Yes, sir. Everett nodded once. Good. Now get out of here before I start thinking you run the place. As Liam and Jack walked out of the boardroom, father and son side by side, Aurora lingered for a moment watching them. She didn't say anything, but something had shifted, and deep down she knew this story had only just begun. They're all the same, lazy and titled. That's why I don't hire them. The voice wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. It was cold, precise, and coated in the kind of arrogance that doesn't realize it's being overheard. The elevator had been empty, except for 3 people that morning. Everett Chow, CEO of Alton Global Holdings, Robert Chun, his longtime VP of Global Operations, and Liam Ellis, standing silently in the corner, headphones dangling from his hoodie, a backpack slung low on one shoulder. Or at least that's what Everett had thought until now. Now Everett was staring at a compact black digital recorder, the same kind used for professional field interviews. It sat on his desk like a loaded weapon, playing back his own words from 2 days ago. Words he couldn't take back. Jack Ellis stood to the side of the conference table, unmoving. Beside him, Aurora Kensington had her arms crossed tightly over, her chest face unreadable. Liam, calm as ever, sat opposite Everett at a folder in front of him, unopened. "I didn't come here for a raise," Liam said quietly as the recording clicked off. Everett opened his mouth, but nothing came out. "You were right," Liam continued about one thing. "I'm not here just because I speak 9 languages. I'm here because I've been listening." Jack turned to his son, whispering, "Liam, this isn't how we handle things." Liam didn't take his eyes off Everett. "Dad, this isn't about handling. This is about justice." Everett's face hardened. "You know that's illegal, right? Recording someone without consent." Aurora's voice cut in sharp and surgical. "New York is a one-party consent state. The person recording must be part of the conversation or present. If Liam was in the elevator, I was..." Liam interrupted, standing right there. "You never even looked at me." Everett stood, chair scraping the floor. "This is extortion." "No," Liam said. "This is accountability." Everett leaned over the table, both hands pressing into the wood. "What do you want?" The question was a growl, a cornered animal pretending not to be afraid. Liam opened the folder. "3 things," he said calmly, laying out typed documents. "First, I want my father promoted to full facility supervisor. $80,000 a year. Full benefits retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year." Everett scoffed. "That's insane. Your father is a janitor. He's a former military linguistic technician with 17 years of service and perfect attendance at this company for 7. He trained me. You've underpaid him for long enough." Jack turned sharply. "Liam, I don't want this like I know Dad," Liam said, gently, "but you deserve better, and so do others." Everett crossed his arms, and the second demand, Liam slid the second sheet forward. "A merit-based scholarship fund for underprivileged youth, especially those overlooked because of their zip code or skin color, fully funded and operational by next quarter. I'll help design the curriculum." Everett narrowed his eyes. "And the third," Liam looked him straight in the eye. "I want to work here officially. Title, Junior Linguistic Consultant. Remote compatible after-school project-based. Salary negotiable but with access to company documents where my skills can be useful." Aurora raised her eyebrows, impressed despite herself. Everett snorted. "You're 14 and I've already saved you $50 million in one meeting," Liam replied without flinching. "I'm not asking for a corner office. I'm offering you protection from yourself." Silence. Then Aurora spoke. "He's right." Everett turned to her sharply. "Excuse me?" Aurora stood slowly. "We've been bleeding international contracts because of tone-deaf language, faulty translations, and cultural mistakes. PR disasters in Brazil, contract delays in Singapore, the Syria deal last fall. A disaster, and now this kid walks in, speaks better Arabic than your Ivy League translators, and catches a litigation trap in our French arbitration clause within seconds. Everett's jaw worked, but he didn't speak. Aurora nodded toward Liam. He's not bluffing. He's better prepared than half our staff. Jack stepped forward. Mr. Cow, I appreciate your time, but this wasn't how I wanted anything to happen. I've always believed in earning what you're given. Everett's voice was low. Then maybe you should teach your son the same. I did, Jack said, his voice steady. But I also taught him not to bow to men who confuse status with worth. The room fell into a silence so heavy it felt physical. Then Liam slid a final paper across the table. A printed contract drafted and signed with space for Everett's signature at the bottom. Everett stared at it. And if I don't sign? He asked, voice low. Liam lifted the recorder from the table, pressed a button, and held up his phone. This audio file goes to the Department of Labor and a few key journalists. It won't be revenge. It'll be reform. Everett stared at him, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Why? He asked quietly. Why are you doing this? You're just a kid. Liam paused. Because I know what it feels like to be invisible, he said. To sit in a classroom with broken AC while rich schools get iPads. To watch your dad work too. Shifts just to be spoken to like he's furniture. And I know what it's like to see a system pretend that's normal. Jack looked down, breathing slow and steady. I'm not trying to burn your empire down, Liam said. I'm trying to remind you that you built it on the backs of people you forgot. People like my father. Aurora stepped forward. I'll co-sign the contract. We can have legal review it by end of day. Everett looked at her. You're siding with them. I'm siding with what's right, Aurora replied. And frankly, with the future, the clock ticked. Everett slowly picked up the pen from the table. Gold, heavy, personalized. He signed. When he looked up, Liam wasn't smiling. He simply nodded. Thank you, he said. Aurora gathered the papers. Everett looked at Jack. You raised him well. Jack's voice was quiet. I didn't raise a genius. I raised a boy who knew his worth. That's all I ever hoped for. As Liam and Jack turned to leave, Everett's voice stopped them one last time. You really were listening, weren't you? Liam turned. Always. Everett nodded slowly. Then maybe it's time I start. Aurora Kensington stood at the edge of the rooftop terrace Manhattan skyline, stretching endlessly before her. The late afternoon sun spilled gold across the buildings, but her coffee had long gone cold in her hands. She had watched careers implode in that boardroom, watched titans rise and fall, but never had she seen a 14-year-old walk into a corporate empire and rearrange the power dynamic like a seasoned litigator with a conscience sharper than most lawyers' pens. That boy, Liam Ellis. That name would linger in her mind longer than it should. The contract had been signed. Everett had caved. Jack Ellis was promoted. The scholarship program was underway. It should have ended there, but it hadn't. Not for her, because something about it all refused to let her sleep. Behind her, the glass door slid open. Jack Ellis stepped out still in uniform, though the new badge on his chest now read Facility Supervisor. He held a bottle of water in one hand and a quiet sort of humility in the other. I figured you'd be up here, he said softly, offering the water. Aurora took it, but didn't sip. Do you always find the highest floor in the building when something's weighing on you? He added. She gave a slight smile. Old habit helps me see the bigger picture. Jack leaned against the railing beside her, looking out. You ever think the bigger picture might be wrong? She turned her head. Excuse me? Jack shrugged. Sometimes we get so good at looking ahead, we stopped looking around. She let that sink in. Because it wasn't wrong. For years, she'd climbed intern to executive, clawing her way up the ranks with no safety net, no wealthy family, no shortcuts. She'd eaten rejection letters for breakfast, outsmarted colleagues who called her darling in meetings and smiled while trying to steal her pitches. But she had made it. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped looking back. "I saw Liam's resume," she said almost to herself. "Do you know he translated a physics thesis from Russian to English for fun?" At 13, Jack gave a half smile. "I know he's not normal, but I also know he still forgets to put the cereal box back in the pantry." Aurora chuckled, a genuine sound that surprised even her. Jack looked at her. "You're the one who looked up his credentials, right? Who confirmed they were real?" "I had to," she said. The board was about to implode. Everett was 2 seconds away from calling legal to start spinning the narrative. Jack nodded. "And you? What did you want to happen?" She hesitated. Then she looked at him. "I wanted to be wrong," she said. "Because if a janitor's son could walk in and dismantle a billionaire's ego with language and logic, then I had to ask myself why we hadn't noticed him sooner." Jack looked down at the city. "We train people to look through windows, not at what's mopping the floor beneath them." Aurora turned toward him and the wind catching her hair. "What's he like?" "As a son," Jack chuckled. "You mean besides terrifyingly smart?" She smiled. "He's kind," Jack said. "Quiet. Always been that way. He listens more than he speaks. And when he does talk, he never wastes a word." Aurora exhaled. "I didn't expect to like him," she admitted. "At first, I thought he was just a clever kid with an attitude." Jack raised an eyebrow. "And now I think he's the kind of person I wish I'd met when I was younger." The moment hung between them, quiet, honest, without pretense. And then Jack said, "You grew up rich." Aurora shook her head. "Queens, 3 siblings, single mom. I was the quiet one. Read books under the blanket with a flashlight. Sound familiar?" Jack smiled. "I used to think getting to the top would make it easier," Aurora said. "But sometimes it just makes you lonelier." Jack didn't speak. He didn't have to because he understood. And then she looked at him, not as a janitor, not as an employee, but as a man who had made choices harder than most executives ever had to face. "Why didn't you ever ask for more?" she asked. "You could have applied for promotion years ago." He leaned his elbows on the rail, thoughtful. "Because sometimes surviving is the promotion," he said. "My wife passed when Liam was 9. I didn't care about title or pay. I cared about making sure his light never dimmed, that he never had to grow up faster than he needed to." Aurora turned away, blinking back something she hadn't expected. "That's the difference," she said quietly. "You built a genius out of love. Most of us just build empires out of fear." A pause. Then Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded crane. Origami perfect and delicate. He used to cry at night when she was gone. Jack said couldn't sleep. So I'd fold one of these and tell him every crane was a dream we hadn't lived yet. After 100, he stopped crying. Aurora held the paper crane in her palm, weightless but powerful. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's unfinished," he replied, like most of us. A long silence followed. Not awkward, sacred. Then Aurora looked up. "Jack." He turned. "Do you think someone like me, someone who forgot where she came from, deserves a second chance?" Jack didn't answer with words. He simply nodded. And then, quietly, deliberately, he said, "Everyone deserves one, if they know how to recognize it. You're too smart to be this quiet, Liam." Aurora Kensington's voice was soft, but it sliced through the silence of the small executive conference, room like glass through velvet. Sunlight poured in from the floor to ceiling windows behind her, casting golden lines across the table. Liam sat across from her backpack at his feet, hands folded neatly in front of him like a young man awaiting trial. He didn't flinch, didn't squirm, just met her gaze with a stillness that felt almost adult. "I talk when there's something worth saying," Liam said. Aurora nodded slowly, lips pressed into a line. Fair. Behind them, Everett Chow paced hands behind, his back, tension radiating off him like static. He was quiet. Too quiet for a man who had once controlled entire boardrooms with just a glance. Legal cleared the contract, Aurora said, sliding a thin folder across the table toward Liam. Everything you asked for. Your dad's promotion, the scholarship program, your consultant position, all above board. Liam didn't touch the folder. Everett stopped pacing. I want to know what happens if I sign this, he said flatly. Do I wake up tomorrow with a headline in the Times calling me a racist billionaire, or do I wake up with my company intact? Liam blinked. That depends. On what? On whether this is a transaction or a turning point. Aurora closed her eyes just for a beat. God, she thought, this kid doesn't miss. Everett scowled. You're enjoying this, aren't you? No, sir, Liam replied calmly. I didn't enjoy any of it, but I did prepare for it. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a second envelope, thicker, heavier. Inside were spreadsheets, performance reviews, loss statements, and a full linguistic analysis of the company's international documents over the past 3 years. You're hemorrhaging contracts, Liam said, sliding it forward. Some of it is tone. Some of it is translation. All of it is fixable. Everett opened the folder. His eyes scanned the first few pages. You analyzed 3 years of international communications. Liam nodded. Public files only. I identified over 700 miscommunications. 50 of them could have been costly. 9 already were. Everett leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Why? Because if I was going to walk into a lion's den, Liam said I wasn't going to do it with just a slingshot. Aurora let out a short breath. Not a laugh, not a sigh. Something between admiration and disbelief. Jack Everett said, turning toward the back of the room where Liam's father had been standing silently. Did you help him with this? Jack shook his head. I bought him the paper. Silence. Everett picked up the pen on the table, the same pen he'd signed international treaties with. IPO filings, multi-million-dollar deals. He tapped it once, then twice, then stared at Liam. You're not even old enough to drive. Liam didn't smile. Neither was Mozart when he wrote his first symphony. Everett stared at him a moment longer, then turned to Aurora. What's the PR risk? Aurora met his gaze evenly. The greater risk is not signing. Everett's fingers closed around the pen. But you signed this, Liam said softly. And it's not just a contract, Everett raised an eyebrow. No, it's a statement, Liam said. That you see more than a janitor's son, that you finally remember what it felt like to have something to prove. That landed hard because no one in that room except perhaps Jack knew that Everett Chow had come to America with a suitcase, a borrowed name, and a scholarship from a church whose pews he'd cleaned at night. He had once been the underdog, and now he'd become the man who stepped on them. Everett looked down at the paper, then signed, 1 stroke, 2 initials, date. He set the pen down and with it a version of himself. Liam didn't smile. He just nodded, then pushed a second device across the table. What's this? Everett asked. A backup recording? Liam said. Of this meeting. You signed freely without coercion for your protection. Everett let out a breath of something close to a laugh. You really thought of everything. I had to. Liam said, people like me don't get second chances. We only get one shot and we don't get to miss. Aurora stood gathering the folder. We'll make sure the program is reviewed quarterly. Transparency as promised. Press release by Monday. Everett walked over to Jack, extending his hand. Jack hesitated, then took it. You raised a storm, Everett said. I raised a mirror. Jack replied. As they left the room, Aurora walked beside Liam. She didn't say anything for a while, just walked. Finally, she asked, What do you want really? When all this settles? What's the end game? Liam looked up at her. Not like a child, not even like a prodigy, like someone who had seen the world blink. I don't want to sit at the table because I'm a novelty, he said. I want to sit there because I earned the chair. Aurora nodded slowly. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a worn leather notebook and handed it to him. Keep this, she said. It was my first pitch journal from when I was 22 and no one would take me seriously. I thought I was invisible too. Liam took it reverently. Thank you. No, she said. Thank you. They stepped into the elevator and as the doors closed, Aurora glanced sideways. You really going to keep that recording? Liam shrugged. Ignorance? Aurora smiled faintly. Smart. He turned to her, voice low. Justice isn't loud, he said, but it leaves echoes. 3 months later, no one at Alton Global Holdings called Liam Ellis the janitor's son anymore. They called him the fixer, the kid who spotted a $50 million mistake before it became a scandal, the one who spoke Mandarin better than the company's lead interpreter, the one who rewrote the terms of not just a contract, but the company's culture. Every week after school, Liam took the 4-train downtown backpack heavy with textbooks and something sharper clarity. He sat in a glass-walled office next to the executive strategy team, translating proposals, identifying tone errors, rewriting technical emails for global partners, and his corrections were working. In just 90 days, Alton Global had closed 8 stalled international deals. The financial boost, $120 million in new revenue. You know what they're saying downstairs? Aurora Kensington asked, sipping her espresso in the corner lounge. They think you're not real, that we fabricated you for PR. Liam smirked without looking up from his laptop. Let them, she crossed her arms. You're not even impressed. I'm not here to impress people, he said. I'm here to make them regret underestimating the ones who never had a voice. Aurora leaned against the windowsill. That should be a slogan. Then you can put it on the scholarship brochures, Liam said, still typing. Aurora smiled. He was razor, sharp, and somehow still gentle, like a violin string pulled tight between wisdom and youth. Meanwhile, Jack Ellis had undergone a transformation of his own. He still wore the same boots, still clocked in early, still carried his own lunch in a brown paper bag. But now the ID badge clipped to his belt read, Director of Facilities and Infrastructure, and the team he supervised 14 employees, including 2 ex-janitors he'd personally nominated for leadership training. Jack still kept his mop, not because he needed it, but because he'd promised himself to never forget the weight of it. One Wednesday afternoon, as the autumn leaves whispered against the skyscraper windows, Aurora stopped by Jack's office. He was fixing a busted air vent sleeves, rolled up forearms dusted with insulation. Didn't think I'd find you doing ductwork, she said. Jack looked up and smiled. Titles don't make broken things fix themselves. She handed him a cold iced tea. I like that about you. Jack took it, nodding his thanks. That why you keep showing up with drinks and questions? Aurora didn't flinch. Maybe I like talking to someone who doesn't treat every word like a negotiation. Jack leaned back against the ladder. And maybe I like someone who listens without waiting to respond, their eyes locked just a second too long. Aurora looked away first. I came to ask if you'll speak at the scholarship kickoff next week. Jack shook his head slowly. I'm not good with microphones. You're good with truth, she said, and this entire program exists because your son made the world look twice. Jack sighed. He's the miracle. I'm just the janitor who didn't give up. Aurora smiled gently. That's exactly what people need to hear. Later that week, Liam stood in front of a whiteboard in a small community center classroom in the Bronx. Around him were 10 kids, ages 9 to 16, leaning forward as he explained the difference between translation and interpretation. He wasn't being paid for this. He just showed up every Friday because once upon a time, he'd been one of those kids with a library card and no road map, and now he was the map. Anyone know what polyglot means? Liam asked. A girl in a yellow hoodie raised her hand. Someone who eats glue. The room burst into laughter. Liam grinned. Close. It means someone who speaks multiple languages. And if you've ever had to speak parent English at home and school English in class, guess what? You already are one. A boy in the back raised his hand. So, if we're already switching languages, why do people say we're bad at English? Liam looked at him, then stepped closer. Because they're afraid of how smart you are, he said. They just don't have the language to say it. Silence. Then slowly the kids began to smile because someone had just named their truth out loud. That night, Jack stood outside the building waiting for Liam. Aurora walked out a moment later, arms crossed against the crisp evening air. You know, she said, for a man who doesn't talk much, your son speaks volumes. Jack smiled. He's always had a quiet engine. Just needed a runway. Aurora hesitated. Do you ever wonder what he could have become if things had been different? Jack looked up at the dark sky. I wonder what the world missed out on by not seeing kids like him sooner. She nodded, quiet. Then she said something she hadn't told anyone. I got turned down from 3 jobs because I didn't sound executive enough, Aurora said. So I memorized vocabulary lists and practiced my voice in the mirror every night for a year. I wanted to be someone people couldn't ignore. Jack looked at her not with surprise, but with something gentler. Recognition. You still do that sometimes? She admitted old habits. Jack was silent a beat. Then he said, You know what? Made me pay attention to you, but you never looked at Liam like he was impressive. You looked at him like he was expected, like brilliance was natural. Aurora softened. Because it should be. She stepped a little closer, then looked down at her shoes. I was thinking, she said almost shyly after the launch event next week. There's a new exhibit at the Museum of Language and Culture, Italian Renaissance manuscripts. You ever been? Jack raised an eyebrow. I fix their HVAC every winter. She laughed a little brighter than she meant to. He tilted his head. Are you asking me out, Miss Kensington? I'm asking if you like Italian, she replied. And maybe company. Jack didn't answer right away, but after a moment he smiled and said, I speak janitor, but I can try curator. Back at home, Liam stood at the kitchen counter, folding a piece of paper slowly into the shape of a crane. Not because he was sad, but because it calmed him, centered him. Jack came in, loosened his tie, and placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You still fold these? Liam nodded. Some nights, Jack sat beside him. Any of them ever fly. Liam looked at his father. One just did. It started with a headline. Billionaire CEO humbled by janitor's son. Teen consultant rescues 50 deal. Then came the subheads. 14-year-old linguistic prodigy now earns more than most adults. Meet the teen who outthought a titan. By Monday morning, Liam's story was everywhere. On morning shows, business blogs, TikTok explainers, and corporate gossip forums. The elevator confrontation had never gone public. Liam had kept his promise, but the contracts he saved, the millions recovered, the sudden rise of a boy from the Bronx into corporate corridors. That part couldn't be contained. He'd gone viral without trying. In the HR lounge, someone whispered, He's in high school and he's making more than my manager. At the water cooler, is it even legal to have a kid consulting for a Fortune 500 by the espresso machine? I heard he threatened the CEO. And online, it was worse. This kid blackmailed his way to the top. Smart or manipulative nepotism in reverse is still nepotism. Liam sat in Aurora's office, scrolling silently through a tablet screen flooded with comment threads and headlines. His jaw didn't clench. His shoulders didn't rise, but his silence screamed louder than any outburst. Across the room, Jack leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. You okay? Liam didn't look up. I knew this would happen. That doesn't mean it hurts less, Jack said. Aurora sat down beside him, careful and quiet. They don't know you. They don't want to, Liam replied. To them, I'm either a symbol or a threat, never a person. Aurora sighed. Do you want me to issue a statement? No, Liam said. I want to speak for myself. That afternoon, the press conference was scheduled. In the main hall at Alton Global, cameras lined the back row. Reporters whispered and typed. The room buzzed with anticipation like a courtroom before a verdict. Everett Chow stood at the podium. First, suit-sharp demeanor controlled, but something in his tone had changed since that day, 3 months ago. I built this company believing excellence rises, he said. But I forgot something. Access matters too. Talent needs a doorway, and sometimes someone kicks it open for the rest of us to see what's waiting on the other side. Then he stepped back, and Liam stepped up. He was wearing a simple navy blazer. No tie, no flash, just himself. The room stilled. I didn't come here today to defend myself, Liam said, voice steady. Because I didn't do anything wrong, he paused. I didn't forge a path. I just stopped pretending the path didn't exist. I learned languages because I wanted to understand the world. I corrected a contract because it was wrong, and I spoke up because silence never changed anything. A murmur swept through the crowd. I didn't blackmail anyone, he continued. I negotiated for dignity for my father and for every janitor, cafeteria worker, bus driver, and overlooked kid who knows more than they're given credit for. He turned locking eyes with the press pool. You want a headline? Try this. Justice isn't charity, it's earned. Cameras clicked. Aurora, watching from the side, whispered to herself. That's the quote. Later that evening, the clip hit every major news network. Millions watched a boy stand in front of suits and spotlights and speak without flinching. Back in the Bronx, kids at Liam's community class stood a little taller. At the public library, the scholarship applications tripled overnight. And somewhere in homes across the country, parents told their children, see, it's possible. But for Liam, the spotlight didn't feel like light at all. It felt like glare. Too many eyes, too many questions. That night, he sat alone in his room, fingers folding paper into the tight lines of a crane, his quiet ritual for when the world got too loud. Jack knocked gently on the door. Can I come in? Liam nodded. Jack sat on the edge of the bed, watching his son's hands move. I saw the interview, he said. I saw the comments, Liam replied. Jack sighed. You know, I once cleaned the floor after a gala where they gave a man a humanitarian award for a donation he made with money he saved by underpaying his workers. Liam looked up. They clapped while I scrubbed wine off the marble. Jack continued. You don't need their applause. You need your truth. Liam nodded slowly. I just wanted them to see the work, not just the story. Jack placed a hand on his shoulder. Son stories are what people see. But you are the work, and anyone who looks long enough will know the difference. The next morning, Aurora walked into the office with a stack of papers and a strange look in her eyes. Jack was adjusting a projector in the conference room. Rough. Night? He asked. Liam's words have gone global. She said Columbia wants to offer him a mentorship. BBC just requested an interview and she hesitated. What? Jack asked. A senator's office reached out. They want to cite his scholarship model in a proposed education bill. Jack leaned back. He's 14. Aurora smiled. He's 14 and changing federal policy. Jack didn't respond right away. Then he said, That doesn't scare you? No, she replied softly. What scares me is how many Liams we've missed. That Friday, Liam walked into his community class like always. The room buzzed a little louder, but he waved off the attention. One of the kids, a shy boy named Miguel, tugged on his sleeve. Hey, they say you're on TV. I'm Liam said, but only because I was in the right library at the right time. Miguel squinted. So, can we still play language bingo today? Liam smiled. Yeah, that's the important part. After class, as the sun dipped low over the Bronx skyline, Jack and Aurora stood waiting outside the building. She wore a simple navy coat. He carried a folded crane in his palm. Big week, she said. He nodded. Liam's growing faster than I can catch up. You raised him to outgrow you, Aurora said. That's what good parents do. Jack looked at her, then offered. The crane. This one's for you. Aurora took it gently. What does it mean? Jack smiled. It means I see you. The office lights had dimmed for the night, leaving only a soft amber glow from the city bleeding through the glass walls of Everett. Chow's corner suite. He sat alone at his desk, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. A tumbler of untouched scotch sat near his elbow. In front of him a folder. Not one from a board meeting or legal team, not press coverage or financial summaries. It was a thick manila. Folder Liam Ellis had left earlier that afternoon, neatly labeled in handwriting that looked like it belonged more to a librarian than a boy cultural missteps and missed opportunities. A linguistic audit of Alton Global 2019 to 2022. Every page. Hurt, not because of the criticism, but because of the truth. Miscommunications, botched phrases, agreements lost not due to product flaws or pricing, but tone, subtext, syntax, pride, respect. Liam had said, sometimes you don't lose deals because of what you say, but because of how you make people feel when you say it. And Everett remembered sitting across from that boy, eyes steady voice, soft and thinking, God, help me. This kid reminds me of me. Liam says he's waiting outside, said Aurora, standing in the doorway now, one hand resting on the frame. Said he wanted to talk to you alone. Everett nodded, rubbing his eyes. Let him in. Liam walked in quietly, backpack slung over one shoulder, the city's night air still clinging to his hoodie. You wanted something? Everett said, motioning toward the empty chair. Liam sat. No? You did? Everett chuckled bitterly. You're not afraid of me, are you? No, Liam said, because you used to be me. Everett froze. That wasn't arrogance. It was precision. Clean, surgical. Liam leaned forward. You didn't grow up in penthouses. Your accent still shows when you get angry. You hold your pen like someone who wasn't taught by a private tutor. You flinch when people say the word legacy. Everett stared at him. I read. Your profile, Liam continued. You immigrated at 16, didn't speak fluent English until 20, got your first loan from a church that made you clean the bathrooms. Everett's lips tightened. Where did you read that? Buried in a Forbes article, 2006, back when you still let people write about your beginnings. Silence. Liam's tone softened. What happened to that kid? Everett stood, walked to the window, staring, out at the city he'd once dreamed of conquering. He grew up. No, Liam said he forgot. Everett's hand pressed against the glass. You think building all this was easy? You think once you make it, the fight's over? I think once you make it, Liam said, you get to choose who you fight for next. Everett turned around, his eyes tired but alert. You think I'm a villain? I think you're afraid, Liam replied, of going back, of losing what you built, of being powerless again. Everett didn't speak. You stopped mentoring people who reminded you of where you came from, Liam said. You only hired polished. Accents made you nervous. Struggle made you suspicious. And you think you know better. I think I haven't forgotten, Liam said quietly. Yet Everett walked back to his desk, sat down, picked up an old photo from the drawer, a black and white snapshot of a 16-year-old boy standing in front of JFK Airport with 2 duffel bags and a chipped suitcase. That's who I was, Everett said, placing it in front of Liam. Liam looked at the boy in the photo, then at the man across the table. You still are, he said. You just need to remember what he hoped to become. The next morning, Everett showed up at the Bronx Public Library. No cameras, no staff, no press release, just him. He stood awkwardly near the front desk until a volunteer pointed him toward the community room where Liam's youth workshop was finishing up. Inside, 10 kids sat in a circle laughing and practicing phrases in German. Liam looked up surprised to see Everett at the door. "Mr. Chow," he asked. Everett gave a small nod. "Can I sit in?" Liam looked at the kids up to them. The kids shrugged and waved him in. Everett took the only empty seat, listened, didn't interrupt. When the class ended, Miguel, the shy boy who once thought polyglot meant glue eater, walked up to him. "You speak other languages?" Miguel asked. Everett smiled faintly. "I used to Arabic, some French." Miguel nodded. "You should come back. It helps to hear old people try." Everett laughed. Not forced, not polished, just real. Outside, Jack was waiting by his truck, sipping coffee from a metal thermos. "You're a hard man to read," he said when Everett approached. "I used to be easy," Everett replied. "Now I'm just careful." Jack nodded. "You ever going to tell Liam what you told me?" Everett sighed. "That he reminded me I still had a soul." "No," Jack said, "that you forgot you had one in the first place." They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Everett said, "You raised a revolution in a library." "No," Jack replied. "I just kept the lights on long enough for him to find his fire." Everett looked back at the building. "I want to fund 10. More of these," he said. "Centers, classrooms, safe spaces where kids like Liam can learn without pretending to be someone else." Jack didn't respond at first. Then he said, "You want to fix your legacy." Everett turned. "Invest in voices before they become echoes." That evening, back in his penthouse, Everett wrote something he hadn't written in 20 years. A letter, not an email, not a memo. A letter addressed to no one, meant for everyone. To the kid I used to be. You were never the problem. You were just too soft for a world that rewards armor. But today, I met someone who fights without a sword, who listens like it's a superpower, who speaks truth and doesn't care who's watching. You'd be proud of him. I'm learning to be. E. He folded the paper, tucked it behind the old photo, and finally, after years of building an empire on silence and strategy, Everett Chow exhaled. "You fold paper the way some people pray." Aurora's voice was quiet but clear, echoing through the hushed corners of the library's upstairs lounge. Jack Ellis didn't look up. His fingers moved slowly, deliberately creased edges, precise corners. A crane was forming in his hands, delicate and white. A gesture from another life. Outside, the rain whispered against the windows. New York, dressed in silver and blur. "I used to fold these for Liam," Jack said, his voice a low rasp. "When his mom died, I didn't have answers, just paper and time. I'd fold one every night, leave it on his pillow. He thought they were magic, said they kept the nightmares out." Aurora stepped forward, her heels silent against the old wooden floor. "Did they?" Jack glanced up at her for a while, he said. Or maybe just long enough. She sat across from him, placing a small, weathered book between them. "This is for you." Jack hesitated, then gently opened it. It was a first-edition Italian poetry collection, worn, annotated, beautiful. Inside the cover, a single note in soft script for the man who gave his son the world without ever asking the world for anything in return. He looked at her brow, furrowing. "I saw it last week at the rare bookshop in Midtown," Aurora said, not quite meeting his eyes. "I don't know. Something about it. Felt like it belonged to you." Jack closed the book carefully, almost reverently. "Thank you," he said quietly. A pause. Then Aurora leaned back, letting the silence breathe. "You know," she said, "I used to think love came in grand gestures, champagne, opera, men who could quote Nuda and make it sound effortless." Jack chuckled once. "I can quote dirty limericks and fix a boiler blindfolded. Closest I've come to opera is when Liam stubbed his toe on a Lego. Aurora laughed, a sound that surprised even herself. Then her expression softened. I've been in rooms full of billionaires, she said, but none of them made me feel like I could sit down and finally stop pretending. Jack's smile was faint but sincere. I stopped pretending a long time ago, he said. Only way I could survive. Pretending takes too much energy when you're just trying to make it to the next paycheck. Aurora nodded. Sometimes I wonder what I'd be if I hadn't clawed my way up. Jack folded another edge. You'd still be you, just maybe a little less tired. She watched his hands move, sure, steady, strong. There was something poetic in it, the way he shaped calm out of paper, how his silence wasn't empty but full. You know, she said. Ever asked me once I was still single. I told him I didn't want to settle. Jack looked at her now, and now he asked. Aurora tilted her head. Now I think maybe I didn't want someone to complete me, just someone who could see all the parts I buried a beat. Jack set the finished crane between them, its wings lifted slightly in the draft from the radiator. You've always been complete, he said. You just needed someone to remind you where you started. Aurora's eyes glistened. Jack, do you think it's too late to start again? Jack didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached out, took the crane, and placed it in her palm. No, he said. Not if you're still breathing. Not if you're still willing. Aurora closed her fingers around the paper bird. I used to be so afraid of breaking, she whispered. Now, I think maybe that's the only way light gets in. Jack leaned forward slightly, his voice soft. Maybe we don't need fixing, he said. Just unfolding. Later that evening, as the rain let up, they walked through the plaza outside the building. Jack, with his hands in his pockets, Aurora beside him in a charcoal coat, the crane peeking from her purse like a secret. A street musician played something mournful on a saxophone. A woman passed by with a bouquet of sunflowers. Life moved around them, unaware or maybe gently approving. I got a call today, Jack said, eyes on the wet pavement. From the district superintendent. Said Liam's name came up for a national scholarship program. Aurora smiled. Let me guess. You told them no press. Jack smirked. Liam told them no press. They stopped near the fountain. Aurora turned to face him. You did something extraordinary, Jack. He shook his head. No, I just kept showing up. She studied him for a moment, then said softly, That's the most extraordinary thing of all. Their eyes held for a moment too long. Then a soft buzz from her phone broke the spell. Aurora glanced down. A message from Everett Press wants a joint statement from you and Jack Relegacy program. Should we meet tomorrow? She sighed, slid the phone back into her pocket without replying. I should go, she said, regret flickering in her voice. Jack nodded. Yeah. She took a step back, then paused, turned at yeah. She hesitated, then simply said, Thank you for reminding me. Not everything has to be a transaction. Jack smiled, then raised his hand in a small wave. Drive safe, Aurora. She walked away without looking back, but her hand never left the pocket that held the paper crane. That night, in the quiet of his apartment, Jack sat at the kitchen table, Liam already asleep down the hall. He opened the Italian poetry book, again, and this time he read, not to learn, not to impress, not to escape, just to feel. One line stood out, circled faintly in ink. Some hearts don't shatter. They fold into wings. Jack closed the book slowly, smiled to himself, and whispered, Amen to that. The plaque outside the glass conference room read the Liam Ellis Young Minds Initiative launch day. There were no velvet ropes, no champagne flutes or glitzy sponsors, just folding chairs, mismatched coffee cups, and a wall covered in sticky notes with scribbled dreams in half a dozen languages. But to Jack Ellis, it felt bigger than any ribbon. cutting ceremony in Midtown. Because this was real. Not a headline, not a photo op. Real kids, real hope, real change. He stood near the back of the room in his usual uniform, freshly pressed, but still humble. Still, Jack, his ID badge. Now Reed, Director of Facilities and Mentorship Development. He hadn't asked for the title. Aurora had insisted on it. Up front, a teenage girl with braids and a shy smile stood behind the podium, adjusting the mic. I used to think speaking Spanish at home meant I'd always be invisible in rooms like this, she said, her voice steady. But Mr. Ellis told me that language isn't what separates us. It's what connects us. And now I teach intro Spanish at the community center every Saturday. The room applauded. Jack looked down. Liam was sitting beside him, legs crossed, quietly scribbling notes on a tablet. You planning your next coup? Jack teased under his breath. Liam smirked without looking up, strategizing. Big difference. A burst of soft laughter rolled through. The room. Aurora was standing beside the girl, now clapping with the rest of them. She wore no makeup, just a navy blouse and jeans. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked at peace, and when her eyes found Jack's across the crowd, she smiled softly, simply like the start of something that didn't need words. After the presentations, reporters trickled out chasing bigger stories, but Jack stayed behind. So did Aurora. They moved slowly between chairs, collecting stray cups and resetting tables. No cameras, no staff. Just them. That girl, Jack said, quietly reminded me of Liam when he was 7. Used to translate for the landlord every time the heater broke. Aurora glanced over. You know, we had 10 new applications before the program even launched. Kids with insane potential, no access, no mentors, no belief in themselves. Jack nodded. Belief is free, but somehow it's still what most kids grow up without. Aurora paused, then asked, When did you start believing Liam was different? Jack leaned against the edge of a table, thoughtful. He was 5, he said. We were in line at the DMV. There was a woman arguing with the clerk in Italian. No one could help her. Liam just stepped forward and translated perfectly calmly like he'd done it all his life. Aurora tilted her head. And you didn't tell anyone? Jack shrugged. He was a kid, and I didn't want the world to take him before he had roots. She let that sit for a moment, then said, The world's lucky you're letting him bloom now. Jack gave a half smile. I didn't let him. He broke through concrete. Later that afternoon, a CNN producer called. Jack declined the interview again. He wasn't interested in becoming anyone's inspiration meme, but he did write a single sentence for Aurora to read if the press insisted. She read it quietly that night after their team dinner when the reporters returned for a last sound bite. My son didn't need the world to believe in him. He just needed me not to stop him. The room fell silent. No follow-up question came. No one dared. That weekend, the Community Sense old storage room was turned into a language lab. Donated tablets, volunteer translators, wall maps in 7 languages. On the first day, Jack found Liam kneeling beside a quiet boy named Mateo, who was staring nervously at the alphabet chart. Jack didn't interrupt, just listened. Doesn't matter how slow you go, Liam told Mateo gently. As long as you don't go silent. Jack stepped back, swallowing something thick in his throat. On Sunday, Jack visited the cemetery. He hadn't been in over a year. The headstone was simple. Claire Ellis, 1979-2013. She sang in 6 languages, but she loved in 1. Jack sat. On the bench nearby, a brown paper bag on his lap, inside a tiny origami crane and a copy of the program brochure. I didn't forget, he said quietly. You told me to keep him dreaming. I did. And now, he's building dreams for others. He set the crane gently at the base of the stone. I'm not sure how we got here, Claire, but it's beautiful. The wind rustled the leaves overhead like applause. That evening, at the top floor of Alton Global Holdings, Everett Chow walked into the empty boardroom. The lights were dim. The skyline glittered. He stared at the long table at the seat where Jack had once stood silently with a mop and a worn pair of work boots. He sat in that chair now, then slowly opened his laptop, typed a few lines, paused, deleted, typed again. Finally, he hit send. The email subject read, "Recommendation letter. Liam Ellis, future diplomat." Back in Brooklyn, Jack was fixing a loose cabinet hinge when Aurora knocked on the door. She held 2 coffees and a red scarf. This was left behind at the launch. She said, "No label, no owner." Jack blinked. "That's Liam," said a little girl. He dropped that. Said she wanted to learn German because she thought it sounded like magic. Aurora nodded quiet. "She's mine," she said. "Her name's Lenny. I adopted her last fall. She was in the system for 6 years. Never spoke until 2 months ago." Jack's eyes softened, and now she wants to speak 9 languages. Aurora smiled. Apparently, it's contagious. They stood in silence for a beat. Then Aurora said, "Do you want to come with us tomorrow? There's a poetry reading in the park, German and English." Lenny's performing. Jack didn't hesitate. "I'd like that." Aurora handed him the scarf. Their fingers brushed, just briefly, but enough. Later that night, as Liam studied under the soft kitchen light, Jack took out a fresh square of paper, folded, creased, shaped another crane. He didn't say anything, just left it at the edge of Liam's desk. Liam looked over and smiled. "Still working your magic." Old man Jack chuckled, just keeping the dreams in flight. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air held that early December hush, the kind that makes you speak softer without knowing why. Central Park glowed under a faded winter sun, golden light flickering through bare branches. Beneath one of the old elm trees near Bethesda Terrace, a small girl with dark curls and a cherry-red scarf sat cross-legged on a bench, her knees bouncing nervously. Lenny, she clutched a notebook with a laminated cover, her language journal, Aurora had called it, and stared out at the small crowd gathered before her. Beside her stood Liam, tall and calm, his breath forming soft clouds as he whispered something in German. Lenny nodded once, twice, then stood. Her voice was barely a thread of sound at first, but the words came clear, rhythmic. "I am a seed hidden in stone, but light finds me, and I grow." The small audience, parents, students, strangers passing by went silent, moved, humbled. By the time she finished, Aurora had tears in her eyes, and Jack, standing just a few feet away, with a thermos of coffee in hand, felt something shift in his chest like a door opening inward. Liam clapped first. Then everyone did. Lenny beamed, her cheeks flushed with pride. Her scarf, too long for her neck, fluttered in the breeze like a banner of her arrival. Aurora knelt beside her and kissed her forehead. Jack just watched, not because he didn't feel it, but because he felt everything. Later, they walked together. Aurora, Jack, Liam, and Lenny down the winding paths lined with fallen leaves and distant saxophone music. Lenny skipped ahead, her voice lilting with new German phrases Liam had scribbled in her journal. Aurora slowed her pace beside Jack. "She calls him the boy who speaks the sky," she said with a smile. Jack raised a brow. "Sky," she says. His words feel like wind. "Gentle, but they move everything." Jack chuckled, then glanced ahead at Liam. "He's not just wind anymore," he said. "He's becoming the storm that clears old paths." Aurora looked up at Jack, something quiet and strong in her gaze. "And you? What are you becoming?" Jack didn't answer right away. Instead, he watched Liam stoop down and tie Lenny's scarf tighter around her neck. Watched his son bend toward the small, the shy, the forgotten, not out of duty, but out of instinct. I think I'm becoming still, Jack finally said, like an anchor letting him sail. Aurora nodded slowly. That's the kind of love people write books about. Jack smiled, then added, or whisper in elevators. That made her laugh, the kind of laugh that said healing takes time, but it's happening. They reached the old stone bridge near the pond. Lenny stopped and pointed. Papa, she said to Aurora, accidentally using the wrong word, then paused. Sorry, I mean Mom. Aurora knelt beside her. What is it? Sweetheart Lenny held up a small, crumpled paper bird in her mittened hand. It's from Liam, she said. He told me every crane holds a wish. I wished I could make someone feel safe, like he made me feel. Jack's voice caught in his throat. Aurora blinked fast. Behind them, Liam leaned against the railing, looking up at the pale winter sky. She's going to be all right, Jack said softly. She already is, Aurora replied, then added, so are you. That evening, they returned to the brownstone in Brooklyn. Jack made cocoa the old way with real milk, a pinch of cinnamon, and 0 shortcuts. Liam sat on the living room floor with Lenny, helping her fold her first crane. He guided her fingers, patiently. Not perfect, she frowned, the paper crooked. Neither am I. Liam shrugged. But here we are. They both laughed. Aurora curled up on the couch with a blanket over her knees, her eyes lingering on Jack as he moved quietly around the kitchen. She saw it all now, not just the man, but the years, the sacrifices, the soft armor he wore around his heart. He walked, over 2 mugs in hand, and offered one without a word. She took it, fingers brushing. Is this your way of flirting? She teased gently. I'm more fluent in folding paper than in reading signals, Jack replied, half grinning. Aurora looked at him, really looked, then leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. Consider that a translation. Jack blinked, then exhaled a quiet chuckle. Copy that. As the evening faded, Liam stepped onto the balcony alone, hands tucked into his hoodie. He looked out over the skyline. Jack joined him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Liam said, Dad, do you think the world is ready for kids like us? Jack didn't look away from the horizon. No, he said. Liam turned to him, puzzled. Jack glanced down at him, eyes kind. But that's why we show up. A beat of silence. Then Liam nodded. Good, he said, because I'm not done showing up. Inside, Lenny had fallen asleep on the couch, her red scarf still wrapped tight around her neck, a finished origami crane resting in her small palm. Aurora covered her with the blanket and sat beside her, her hand absent-mindedly resting over Lenny's. And beside her, Jack took a seat, not as a janitor, not as a forgotten man, not even as a mentor, but as someone who had finally arrived in his own story. She leaned her head gently on his shoulder. No words were needed, only presence. Only peace. Outside, the city hummed with noise and neon. But inside that little Brooklyn home, a janitor's son, a girl with a scarf, a mother who had once built walls, and a father who had only ever built wings, sat in stillness together. Justice isn't charity, it's earned. Love doesn't need loud moments, just the ones that last. And sometimes the ones the world walks past are the ones who build the next. And maybe that's where this world needs a little more of. Not perfection, not power, but people who show up even when they're not expected to. People who fold paper cranes instead of raising their voices. People who raise children with dignity even when no one claps. If this story moved you even a little, tell us where are you watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your city, your heartbeat, and if stories like this speak to you. Stories about kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of those often overlooked. Don't forget to subscribe. There's more to come. So much more from all of us here. Thank you. Thank you for giving your time, your heart, and your presence. We'll see you in the next story.